So you started Giant basically because you were doing all these sessions and you thought, I could do this.
You know everything.
How'd you know how to sing?
It was out of necessity. We had singers and we didn't get anywhere. So it was kind of necessity. This involves, we've been talking a lot about Steve Lukather, I love talking about Steve Lukather. I remember at a NAMM show, we had just done our band called Giant's first record. And it had some good stuff on there. And I saw Steve coming down the hall or just the walkway in NAMM show, and in typical beautiful Steve Lukather, he just says whatever's on his heart, man. He doesn't have. I think I tend to have too much of a filter.
He's got no filter.
He's got beautifully no filter. Maybe he wishes. I mean, if Steve ever hears this, maybe he wish he. I have no idea.
I've heard stories of him of all kinds of things. With Steve.
He's a one of a kind. That's no doubt about that. But he came down the hall, and I'll never forget because it was such a Steve thing to say. He said, "Man, I love your record. Just I can't believe that's you singing. That doesn't sound anything like you."
Yes.
Yeah, my speaking voice, and obviously, my assumption he thought I was a bit mousy. And the singing voice is a little bit different. But yeah, that's how the voice is not quite. There was way too much work, by the way, too.
How do you? So you started Giant basically because you just thought you were doing all these sessions and you thought I could do this. So you started Giant with a couple friends. You were rehearsing out of the REO Speedwagon, rehearsal space.
You know everything.
How'd you know how to sing? Because you sound great on those records. Come on, Dan. You sound flawless on those Giant records.
Thank you. It was out of necessity. We had singers and we didn't get anywhere. And so Alan Pasqua and I started writing some songs, and I had sung it previous to moving out to Los Angeles. I'd been in a Christian band, and I sang a couple songs on those records. So I knew I could sing, but I didn't grow up wanting to be a rock star. I didn't want to be a singer, so it was kind of necessity, and we got signed. So there you go, enough affirmation. Well, I'm a singer.
Yeah.
I couldn't even play and sing at the same time. I had to learn all that stuff.
When you saw, I've heard you say that you've said that the reason the band, I guess, ended was you saw this Pearl Jam clip of Eddie Vedder climbing rafters and you thought, that's so interesting or that's so engaging.
Oh,
I'm out. Was that like an excuse though? Like, were you sort of not into it though? Because I feel like you could have, knowing you and how passionate you are and how dedicated you are, I feel like you could have been like, okay, well, they're going to do that thing, but we're still going to do our thing. Like, I feel like that could have been a reason to keep going. You could have been like, well, that's not very musical. We're so musical. There could have been a million reasons why that could have inspired you to keep the band going. But that's what really made you go, I don't think this is going to work anymore.
Well, that's partially true. I didn't quit and disband the thing because of that. It just seemed obvious. I mean, I remember that was a very seminal moment. I remember where I was. I saw that, and all I could think of was, that is riveting, and I'm not that. That's not me. I mean, I have other things that I do well, but that, if I'm attracted to that, that's so different. I mean, and music has all, it's like, what, if 7-8 years, things change, and this was in an answer to the 80s. We'd become corporate, use anything. 80s music became sports oriented. It was just whoever could fly the fastest. And these guys said, we're not doing that. And here's what we're about. And everybody was going, that's a breath of fresh air. Well, no, I just saw it and thought, that's the nail in the coffin. It took us another year to kind of just peter out. You could just feel it, that the attention was going somewhere else. And I had a young family, and it was like, well, I'm not going to go out and put my family through this. So it was just natural.
Yeah. How glad are you though that you got to live the rock star life for 2 albums and you got to tour, and like, would you be upset if you never got to do that one time with your talent?
I suppose you'd have a regret.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm more thankful that it didn't work out. I feel the other way because now at this point in my life, if that's how I'd
have to be on the road, you'd have to.
I'd be on the 4:00 slot of the Where Are They Now. I mean, I would be the Where Are They Now, the one hit wonder slot. And I mean, God, my gut, I don't have that kind of hair. I mean, it would just be a burden, right? Yeah, to do that, to try to sing those songs. And especially for us, it's like, I mean, this is just my take on it. That was a bit more testosterone filled time. You're singing about, it's all sex, innuendo, and all that kind of stuff. And as you get older, I mean, to each his own, as far as I'm concerned. There's not a right or wrong. It's just that I pursue other things, thematically, philosophically, spiritually, whatever it is. And that would be a big disconnect for me at this point in my life.
Right.
I can look at it nostalgically and like for me, my grandkids listen to Time to Burn. They think that's cool.
Yeah.
They sing that song.
That's such a great record.
It's fun. They love it. I mean, but would I want to go out and play that?
No, that's aggressive. It'd be crazy.
The last time that I played that song was in a benefit. I think about 4 or 5 years ago.
This is the Basement East, right?
Yeah. Well, I did two things. There was one time I did one thing with it was called a giant reunion of sorts, and we had to rehearse for a day and do it, and we actually did okay. But I did one with my son.
No way.
He played. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, we were down in the basement. He came over to the house here. He had a set of drums, and just to watch my son watch me struggle with the speed, because he when I say he has a we can't figure it out yet. He hasn't been able to play drums for 2 years, so it's quite. I mean, he can function, but he can't play drums. It's just the hardest thing. Whole another subject. But when he was playing, he had the facility and the chops that I never have had. I mean, I had chops. This guy could. I mean, for him, that was. He just looked at me like, "Come on, Dad, you can do it." And it was his best thing, getting to play that song one time with my son. That was great.